And welcome back to another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast where I, Richard Harris, talk about why I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s to today. Today's topic is sportsmanship. As a young man, I used to work at a summer camp in upstate New York called Adirondack Camp. And Adirondack Camp had these magical plaques on the dining room ceiling hanging down that define what a Gold Eagle winner is. And he or she represented all of these wonderful qualities. And one of the qualities was sportsmanship. In the 80s and 90s, sportsmanship was flimsy. And what I mean by that is teams, players actually hated other teams and other players. Never forget, as long as I live, Charles Martin picking up Jim McMahon and body slamming him and injuring him. If he did that today, that would be a crime. I remember back in the day, Buddy Ryan supposedly putting bounties on players, and players supposedly putting bounties on other players that they got found out about in New Orleans. But in the 80s and 90s, didn't get found out. Well, it did get found out, but no one cared. Buddy may have gotten a fine. But the Eagles and the Bears used to try to hurt people. The biggest difference between sports today and yesterday is everybody today is friends. And what made me think of this podcast, of course, was the Ryder Cup. Ryder Cup golf. This weekend, Europe continued its domination of America in Europe by beating us 16.5 to 11.5 in a team competition. And I'm not saying that in the 80s and 90s, the Ryder Cup was venomous. The players didn't like each other. But there was a disdain that players had for each other in the golf world because certain players felt disrespected by America and certain Americans felt disrespected by the Europeans. And so there was a little angst, anger, disgust to lose to Europe or for America to beat Europe. And in all sports, there was always that can't stand this person, can't stand this team. Whether you like the Celtics, whether you like the Bulls, Pistons, there was always a disdain for somebody. And it was real. Obviously, the biggest scandal, quote unquote, was the Dream Team that allegedly, which Michael Jordan denies, that he supposedly is accused of keeping Isaiah Thomas off the Dream Team. Most people feel Isaiah Thomas, in fact, everybody believes Isaiah Thomas should have been on the Dream Team, the original Dream Team. But he wasn't. And they say because Mike didn't want him there, Scottie Pippen didn't want him there. But today's sports, everybody's buddies. And it's funny because watching the Ryder Cup, you look at all the kids from the European team. I call them kids because they're younger than me. And almost every one of them played golf at a college in America and excelled. and obviously became professional. And obviously might have played against some of these American, in fact, did play against some of these American players that they're playing in the Ryder Cup against in college. And they've known of each other, they've known each other for years. So it's not like this vim and vigor, anger, I hate you, want to beat you because you're Europe thing. And some people think that's why Europe always beats us over there, because we don't go over there with an attitude that we hate them. We go over there with an attitude of they're our friends. A little friendly match of golf, USA versus Europe. Or when we do the President's Cup, we do better in the President's Cup because I think our golfers are just better than some of the other remaining countries. But again, don't feel like it's an anger thing. In tennis these days, there's an anger thing because on the women's side, there are players who represent Ukraine, and there are players who represent Russia. And the Ukraine players or other players who support Ukraine supposedly now don't shake hands with the Russian players because of the war. That's as close as it gets in terms of anger. I mean, in basketball, they don't hate each other anymore because everybody gets traded to everyone's team. Everybody wants to play with their friends, and sometimes you get put on your friend's team that got players that you don't like. Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook supposedly couldn't stand each other. But then last season, they played together for the Lakers. And they hugged it out and were all good. But during Mike's days, during Larry's days, during Dr. J's days, they didn't want to play with players that beat them or could beat them. They wanted to beat them. But not today. Today, everybody wants to be with the cool kids. And usually the cool kids teams don't win, or they win, but they don't win the championships. I mean, supposedly they're saying that my man who got clocked by Draymond Green said something to the effect of don't be Steph Curry's backpack, or you can call him his name. He said number 30's backpack. Something to the effect implying that Steph Curry's carried Draymond on his back. That's why he got clocked. Jordan Poole. That's a funny line. But they were teammates. And now they'll play against each other because now Jordan Poole's been shipped out. The NBA don't care about about rivalries or, anything anymore. Everybody's friends. I remember when Lonzo Ball came into the league and Lonzo's father was talking all this smack about how good his son is and he's going to have all his kids play for the Lakers and blah, blah, blah. In the first game of the season, they faced, I want to say it was either the Kings. I think it was the Kings. And Patrick Beverley threw the kibosh on him, played defense on him like nobody else's business. Absolutely shut him down. And it was discouraging. And then the next game Lonzo played, he didn't play that well either. And then all of a sudden, they played like the Lakers and they played Golden State. And like everyone was like hugging him after the game, trying to like whisper in his ear, saying, hey, keep your head up, trying to encourage him, trying to keep his spirits going. And I'm sitting there going, what is this all about? He's a competitor. You're not your boy. But then you hear stories about players in the 80s, which is kind of funny. Michael Jordan used to kill the Knicks all the time. Michael Jordan used to kill everybody all the time. But his best friend in the league were Knicks players, Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing. But on the court, no, 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 no. I mean, last night, Notre Dame against Duke. Notre Dame's quarterback drives Notre Dame to a game-winning touchdown. Duke's quarterback was trying to drive and fractures his ankle. Notre Dame wins the game. It's dramatic. It's TV cameras everywhere. It's the greatest thing. He's being interviewed. Hartman's being interviewed. And Holly Rowe asks him a question. He's like, listen, Holly, I'd like to keep talking, but I want to go check on my friend on Duke who's hurt, quarterback from Duke. That's great sportsmanship. That's what sports is supposed to be about. But you just beat him. Go home. Send him an email. The kid from Colorado State. Cheap shot at the kid from Colorado. Deion Sanders says, hey, that's football, man. It happens. Deion's from my generation. But supposedly the kid was getting death threats and all kinds of stuff for doing it. He didn't mean to do it. He did what he did. And then all of a sudden, there's an article 2 days ago saying that the kids got together and went bowling because the Colorado State kid is from Boulder. And he wanted to be able to go home. So they got together and they went bowling. This weekend in college football, Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12 to go take their chance in the SEC, which makes no sense whatsoever, especially since Texas has its own network now, and it don't need the money. Oklahoma don't need the money either. But they're going to the SEC. But they're going to make sure to keep the Red River rivalry going. And it's so funny. They're keeping that rivalry going, but Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, that play in the same state, not happening. Texas hasn't played Texas A&M since Texas A&M bolted to the SEC. Now it may happen again. But after the game, they'll all be buddies. Because they all grew up together. A lot of kids who go to college in Oklahoma from Texas. So they know each other. Don't want to say it's all incestuous around the world in sports, but ain't no hate. I find it funny. Agassi didn't hate Sampras. Sampras didn't hate Agassi. But they competed like they hated each other. Jim Courier, he kind of didn't like Agassi. Although he pretended he did, but I don't think he really did. Because Andre had the campaign, images, everything, and then all of a sudden the media came out with Jim Courier with winning is everything as opposed to image is everything. And so they're all like, Sampras and Courier, they care about winning. Andre Agassi cares about image. So we're trying to create that rivalry. And then Michael Chang and Andre Agassi, people didn't think they got along. People didn't like Martina Navratilova. Martina and Chrissy, that was a rivalry, but apparently they were best friends. My favorite, Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. If you watch the Ali movie, Frazier and Ali were buddies. When Ali didn't fight for a few years, Frazier was like, "Look, need a couple dollars? I'll help you out." But we miss the rivalries. Today, Auburn and Alabama, they can't. Michigan people don't say Ohio State, and Ohio State don't say Michigan. They say that school up north. They say that school down south. That's cool. Now that Michigan's starting to win some, it's back to being a rivalry. because it was all Ohio State for like, what, 8 years in a row? Alabama dominated Auburn for a while, and then all of a sudden, Auburn had Cam Newton and won that game, and then the kick that went to the field goal, Alabama was trying to kick a 56-yard field goal and didn't get it, and the kid from Auburn ran it back for a touchdown. I have a friend, she is a huge Alabama fan, and she's like, she won't drink Tennessee whiskey because from Tennessee. She's my age group. So it's there. It's just not manifesting itself because teams are beating the other teams so badly and so often. But we miss the rivalries in sports because the fact of the matter is teams just don't win against other teams as much. Aaron Rodgers was talking smack about Detroit. They always beat Detroit. Detroit finally got him last year. Now he's a Jet. Giant fans, it's funny. All the NFC East team fans criticize the Cowboys. But at the end of the day, the only team that's beating the Cowboys is the Eagles. Washington and the Giants, we can't say nothing about the Cowboys. We done lost 9 straight to the Cowboys. We hate the Cowboys. But what can you say to them? We hate the Eagles more. But what can we say to them? Nothing. They keep beating us. My point is, rivalries are okay to have. I remember when I was coaching a baseball team out here in St. Genevieve's, and one of the kids pulled me aside and said, "Coach, you can yell at us if we're messing up." And I was kind of hesitant to do so because, you don't know, these day and age with the kids today, you say the wrong thing, you're out of a job. I feel the same way with rivalries. You can hate somebody. You don't have to be everybody's friend. They used to say that about Tiger. Tiger just plays. He don't talk to you. But now he's older. He's not a dominant guy. He talks to you. Larry didn't talk to you. He talked crap to you. He wasn't trying to be your friend. It's okay. It's okay. We know LeBron, D. Wade, Chris Paul, Carmelo, they're all buddies. And only LeBron and Chris Paul are left playing in the game. When they played against each other, they play hard against each other. It's okay. It's okay to be rivals. It's okay to talk smack. Just back it up. That's all I ask. We'll get back to it. The rivalries will come back. When the teams start to level off and then all of a sudden you beat me this time, I beat you this time. The Mets and the Braves, people try to say that's a rivalry. Ain't not a rivalry. Braves kick our butt all the time. Boston and the Yankees. That rivalry is phasing out too. A lot of the Yankee players all of a sudden playing for the Red Sox. Well, a lot of Red Sox players starting to play for the Yankees. They asked Derek Jeter, he said, "Would you ever play for the Red Sox?" He said, "Hell no." Nomar felt the same way too. Nomar, you play for the Yankees? Hell no. But A-Rod did. A-Rod jumped at the chance. He wasn't part of the Red Sox Yankee thing. He was Seattle and Texas, and they said he was a Met fan. But he went to the Yankees. I want to be a part of this rivalry. There ain't no rivalry. Pedro throwing Don Zimmer on the ground. Fights. A-Rod got hit with the pitch when fighting Jason Varitek. You can fight him. They hugged each other. They're not going to throw at Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is 6'8", 270. Boston ain't got nobody big enough to contain him. I mean, the first baseman, Cassis, is a big guy, but he ain't 270. They're not going to throw at John Carlos Stanton. He's 6'5", 250. They ain't going to mess with him. The Dodgers, Giants. 2 years ago, was it 3 years ago, when they both won? One team won 107 games, the other team won 106 games. And then did nothing in the playoffs. Dodgers beat them. The last few years, Dodgers have been beating the crap out of everybody in the division. Since then. Just bring back the rivalries, folks. That's all I'm asking. Bring it back. Bring sports back. Sports will be fun again. This lovefest is annoying.